Every sale is different, but there are some things common to all sales situations. There's always a salesman, for instance, and a customer, and whether you like it or not, there is generally an obstacle. Sales obstacles and what to do about them is the subject of this film. We'll put you into some typical sales situations and raise some real problems you may be getting from your customers. The solutions suggested will be just as real as the problems. They are based on the experiences of distributor salesmen like you. In no case, however, is the solution suggested the only possible one. To allow for a discussion of how you would handle each problem, the film will be stopped from time to time. Our first sales situation is set in a medium-size industrial, where P.J. Robinson is maintenance supervisor. He's a good man, Robbie. The purchasing agent takes his recommendation on just about every piece of equipment that goes into the plant. Robbie has just received a quote on a load center from distributor salesman Bill Hughes.
Well, there's something else I'd like to leave with you, Robbie. With all the new equipment you're putting in, you'll find this useful, I think.
I've already seen this. You might as well take it back.
I'll keep it. I have more copies.
It'll just end up in my wastebasket. You know I'm not interested in any GE control.
Oh, come on, Robbie, give me a chance. You never did hear the full story on the 100 line.
How many times do I have to tell you? I'm standardized on one brand of control.
Well, sure, that made sense when all your original equipment was one brand. But now that you're expanding, you have an opportunity to put in a whole block of General Electric control and get some of these new design features.
I know. You're going to say better coils, better contacts. But that's no answer, Bill. Your competition puts out a good modern control, too. And what's more, they've made all their improvements within the same basic design. A starter that I put in 20 years ago and one that I put in last year will both take the same basic line of renewal parts. Now, what would have happened if I'd gone along with General Electric control all these years?
Well, to begin with,
I'd need 4 different sets of contacts just to keep up one type of starter. Multiply 4 times the components of all the control forms I have, I'd be up to my armpits in renewal parts by now. When I stick to one line of control, I get control I already know. I can stock one basic line of renewal parts that probably won't change until after I retire. All this can be somebody else's worry. There's your problem in a nutshell, Bill.
Hold it. As Mr. Robinson said, there's your problem in a nutshell. The customer has standardized on a competitive brand. He's not willing to listen to anything good about General Electric control. This is undoubtedly a problem most of you have run into while trying to sell the new 100-line control. Suppose you were in Bill Hughes' place. What would you do? If the projectionist would like to turn us off, maybe you would like to kick around some ideas. All right, let's turn Bill Hughes loose and see how he handles the standardization obstacle.
Okay, Robbie, okay. You're exaggerating things a bit, but I can see how the General Electric line changes could make a problem for you with your particular setup. But suppose I told you that General Electric intends to keep this design.
Let them keep it. Until this design has been on the market as long as some of the other brands.
I get the message.
It's about time.
How about letting me show you something the other brands don't have, and something I happen to know you can use?
What's that?
A vane-operated limit switch. You know the trouble you're having with limit switches on your conveyors? Because the operating arms break and because oil gets inside the switch and on the contacts?
How will this help out?
Well, this switch has no moving parts except for the hermetically sealed contacts. There are no operating arms. And because the entire switch mechanism is encapsulated in a cast aluminum enclosure, it's protected against spraying liquids, oil, dirt, what have you. It's ideal for your conveyors, or any other place where you're replacing or repairing limit switches frequently.
Might be. Might be. You have any literature on this?
You see, Robbie, this switch is typical of the improvement you can get only with a completely new design. That's why...
You just won't quit, will you?
I'm a salesman.
Well, I'm satisfied with what I've got, as far as most control goes, and you won't sell me anything else.
Well, heck, you won't give me a chance. How long has it been since you seriously considered a GE starter?
Oh, I don't know. Way back when they put out the clapper type, I guess.
Why, there have been 2 design changes since then.
That's my point exactly. Your competition hasn't made any design changes since then, and that's the way I like it.
Look, Robbie, will you do me a favor? How about getting up to date on what you don't like? Let me go through all the features of the 100-line control with you just once and get it over with. Then I'll figure I've done all I can and I won't waste any more time on it.
All right. You're on.
I think that at least one thing about this line will interest you, Robbie. The ease of inspection. And you notice I didn't have to use a screwdriver or any other tool to do all this, except for taking the wiring off the overload. Another important feature to you is the flexibility of this line. If you stock a basic starter and these modification kits, you can put together a starter yourself to meet most of your requirements. Or we can do it for you and give you fast delivery.
Well, I'll tell you this, Bill. If I did buy any of this control, and you came in here with a new line in a year or so, you've had it.
This is the line they're going to run with, Robbie. With a product this good, who's going to change it?
Well, I don't know.
Bill Hughes has gotten around that first big obstacle. He has at least led his customer to consider the possibility of buying General Electric control. Bill has a long way to go before making any sale, but with a superior product at a competitive price, his chances are now better than fair. And I guess the strategy that Bill used was pretty clear. He admitted that this particular customer had good reason for being concerned about changes in the control line. And then he made an end run by diverting the customer to a positive subject, a product that Bill knew the customer would have a particular interest in. In this case, it was the vane-operated limit switch. It might just as well have been the new foot switch, or the new drum switch, or the new stainless steel enclosure. And when Bill had the customer going his way, he worked around to the solid benefits made possible by a new design. Now, we don't say this is the only way to handle the standardization obstacle that you frequently encounter in selling general-purpose control to industrials. But it is one method that distributor salesmen have told us works consistently. Now, let's take up another typical sales situation. In this case, the problem is not so much a positive preference for competition, but rather the customer's indifference. Like any good salesman, Mike Perkins keeps his eyes and ears open whenever he's in a customer's plant. Many sales opportunities turn up without notice.
Every time I get out here, Tony, you put in some new piece of machinery.
Well, you have to keep growing or you stagnate. You know that.
Keep it up, you'll be getting too big for this plant, won't you?
Someday, probably. But not for a while yet. We keep going along pretty well by changing things to meet our needs as they come up.
I don't know about that, Tony.
Huh?
I'll bet I know one thing you haven't changed.
What's that?
Come on, I'll show you. Open it up, will you? Just as I thought. You're still using the same fuses you were 10 years ago.
I got you there. These fuses are brand new. I know because I had to change them myself. One night I was here alone when one of these old fuses blew. For no reason at all. They were pretty old, I guess. Well, anyway, I changed all 3 of them and replaced them with new ones. Couldn't have been more than a month ago.
I'm not talking about when you put them in. I'm talking about the design of the fuse. That's the type you used 10 years ago.
So, what's wrong with it all of a sudden?
Chances are it's not adequate for the kind of short circuit you can get today. What you need is CLF fuses.
What kind?
General Electric CLF fuses. They fit right into these clips. No adapter.
What's the difference?
The most important is the interrupting capacity. You see, the CLF has a specially designed pure silver element, which melts...
Which I pay for, right? How much does one of these CLFs cost?
For a 30-amp rating like you're using here, about $1.
Let me get this straight. For these 30-amp fuses, I pay about 2 bits. And for the 30-amp size in your silver fuse, I pay $1?
That's right.
Now, why should I pay so much more for a fuse that does the same thing?
Hold it. I guess any of you who have tried to sell CLF fuses have heard this question. Suppose you were Mike Perkins. How would you answer it? Now, let's see how Mike Perkins handles the indifferent customer.
In a sense, Tony, they both do the same thing. Both fuses melt when the current becomes excessive. The difference is in how they melt and how much protection they give you.
Go ahead, Mike. I'm listening.
As I was saying, the difference is in how much protection they give you. Now, the CLF will interrupt even a severe short circuit without explosion or fire, while a conventional fuse...
Explosion?
The kind of short circuit you can get today has enough kick to blow a fuse right out of the box and scatter it around the room like shrapnel. I think I have some pictures of tests that show this. You want to have a look?
Yeah, I'd like to see them.
Go ahead and finish whatever you have to do. I'll have to look through my bag for the bulletin. And these are frames taken right from high-speed movies of that test. On this one, we see the test setup. Conventional fuses in a standard box. Now you see the start of the short circuit. Now it's building. And here comes the fuse right out of the box in pieces.
And this didn't happen with your CLF fuses?
No. The reason, you see, Tony, is that CLF fuses have an interrupting capacity of 200,000 amps. Conventional fuses don't have any published AC interrupting ratings.
Were these tests made at 200,000 amps?
Well, I don't think so. Let me see. Now, here you are, 40,000 amps. You have about 40,000 amps available, don't you, Tony?
Yeah. Of course, it isn't every day that we get a 40,000 amp short circuit.
No, but it'll take only one to do the damage. And your chances of getting a big short circuit are increasing all the time.
What do you mean?
Well, there have been a lot of new businesses out here in the past 10 years.
You said it, and more to come, too. Well, what's that got to do with my fuses?
With industrial expansion, the power needs increase, and the utility adds capacity in the area. This steps up the level of short-circuit current that could be let loose in your plant.
And these CLF fuses can interrupt that kind of short circuit?
Not only interrupt it, control it.
Control it?
These fuses melt so fast that the short circuit doesn't get a chance to reach its maximum value. They actually limit the amount of short-circuit current that can flow. It's the best possible protection for your equipment.
Well, that's a pretty good story, but I'm...
And here's something else to consider. CLF fuses not only work better when trouble occurs, they work better when nothing is wrong.
Come again?
Weren't you saying that your other fuses blew for no reason at all?
Huh?
That time about a month ago?
Oh, yeah. But you know, you have to expect those things with fuses once in a while.
With ordinary fuses, yes. With CLF fuses, no. You see, ordinary fuses can change characteristics because of aging on the shelf, or due to weakening by current surges on the line. Now, this CLF has a pure silver fuse element, which is not nearly as susceptible to age or wearing as the element in a conventional fuse. That means it can last indefinitely on the shelf. And it ends this trouble of changing fuses because of nuisance blowing.
Well, it won't hurt me to change a few fuses once in a while.
No, I suppose not. But it might really hurt you or one of your employees to be standing near that box if you get a healthy short in here.
Let me hold this book for a while, Mike.
Keep it.
I want to talk this over with my partner. It's possible we may...
Mike Perkins is well on his way to making a sale. He drove home the very real possibility of injury and damage that was growing up under the customer's eyes. But Mike didn't insult his customer's intelligence by exaggerating the damage. He documented the drastic effects of a severe short circuit by evidence from this test. Mike honestly admitted that a 40,000 amp short circuit, like the one applied here, may not happen often. But like a good insurance salesman, he concentrated on possibility rather than probability. Then, with his major point registered, he followed up with added benefits he knew would interest the particular customer. How did Mike's method check out with yours? Again, we don't say you have been watching the only way to sell this product, but it is an approach that has proved successful. Now, let's turn to another sales situation. Matt Cunningham is an electrical contractor, one of the busiest in the area. Distributor salesman Howard Russell knows he has to give Matt something of value for every minute he spends with him. Matt has the contract for the new high school. He and Howard are taking off the specs some of the electrical equipment that will be required.
That about does it, Howard. I'd like the prices by Thursday noon if I could, so I can make a decision.
You bet. Matt, what's this?
This? Oh, well, the school is going to take its power from the utility on the high side and step it down for distribution. With all the shops and home economics classes they'll be running in the new building, they'll use almost as much electricity as a small factory.
I've heard about this kind of arrangement. They get a better rate by taking the power at 4160 volts, huh?
That's right. As a taxpayer, I like the idea. But making the installation is a real headache for me. I don't make any money on that part of the job.
You'll need some distribution equipment. Want me to add it to my list?
Don't get eager. I'm not ready to talk about this yet. I've got to give some thought to how I'm going to handle it. The specs aren't really clear.
Well, suppose you could get one unit that had everything already in it. Incoming line terminals, outgoing feeders, transformer switches, everything.
Howard, this is a school. It's only a 225 kVA load. It doesn't call for a substation or anything fancy like that.
Hold it. The customer is confusing completeness with complexity. What would you do about it? Now, watch Howard Russell pursue the question.
Matt, I'm not talking about a substation. I'm talking about a 225 kVA package that's completely assembled at the factory. You just put it in place with a forklift, and one of your men can hook up in about half a day. There are only 3 electrical connections to be made.
Well, I didn't think General Electric made anything that small.
They make them all the way down to 75 kVA now.
You say this unit is all put together at the factory. Well, how does the factory know exactly what's needed for this job? Do you draw up a set of specs?
Now, Matt, I'd be lying to you if I told you I could. I just haven't had time to go deeply enough into this kind of application. But I...
And neither have I. So I'll have to go out and hire a consulting engineer.
No, you wouldn't, Matt. Now, let me finish. If you'll loan me that drawing, I'll go over it with the General Electric sales engineer who's my contact. When I come back next Thursday, I'll bring along his recommendations. General Electric calls it an integral distribution center. Now, the big advantage is that you order the complete unit according to the end use it's intended for, not according to the way you have to put it together.
Not a bad idea, Howard. Looks as if it might work. Do you know the Smith and Bar factory?
Just off the main highway, about 12 miles out.
That's the one. I'm doing a plant modernization job for them. You think one of these units would go okay there?
Probably. What's the load?
1,000 kVA.
General Electric makes integral distribution centers that size. Now, they come with different kinds of transformers. Dry, open or sealed, and oil-filled or pyranol-filled to meet any...
Yes, well, how do I know which kind I need? Would this GE guy be willing to write up some recommendations?
Oh, I'm sure he would. As a matter of fact, he can furnish you with construction drawings immediately on standard units in the higher kVA line. Look, he said he'd like to come over here and talk with you about this. Now, why don't I set up a date?
Howard Russell has opened up for himself a whole new area of sales opportunity by the simple expedient of convincing his customer he really wanted the business and showing him a new way of doing things. Also, Howard Russell made good use of the backup of his GE sales engineer. A distributor salesman who handles hundreds of products cannot be expected to know the ins and outs of highly technical equipment, such as an integral distribution center. In this kind of sales situation, the help of your GE sales engineer can be invaluable. He's in place not only because he carries the right technical credentials, but also because he knows how to deal with your customers. He's there to help you sell. When the occasion warrants, why not take advantage of his help? Now for our last sales problem. Encapsulated motors is the topic of conversation between salesman Joe Martin and plant engineer Eddie Hunt. And it's a real man-bites-dog situation as the salesman says no to the customer.
No, you're getting me wrong.
I didn't say I couldn't sell you encapsulated motors. I said I couldn't see why you need them.
Because we can't afford to go on making you and the repair shops rich, that's why. It's nothing personal, Joe. We like you fine and all.
Well, if you're out to cut costs on motors, why are you so willing to pay a premium for encapsulation?
Well, the way we figure it, with the extra life it saves us, encapsulation will more than pay for itself. That way we won't have to buy any more totally enclosed motors, the fan-cool kind. That'll balance out the cost of getting encapsulation on the others. If we go over completely to encapsulated motors, in 10 years or so, we'll be ahead of the game.
What you're saying then, Eddie, is that you think encapsulation is the answer to all your motor problems.
It's the best answer I've heard so far.
Hold it, Joe. This is one of the most prevalent sales problems distributor salesmen face today. Competition is promoting the merits of encapsulation in a big way. Some of it is rubbing off on your customers. What are you telling them? Joe Martin is ready with an answer.
Eddie, there's no denying encapsulation is a good idea where it's properly used. It does have its place. But frankly, encapsulated motors are expected to perform miracles, and they can't. There's nothing magic about what encapsulation will or will not do. Well, let's take some specifics. Now, that's really the only way to go at this encapsulation business. Your generating room, for instance.
What about it?
Well, it's closed off from the rest of the plant. It's clean. It's dry. Why put encapsulated motors in there? Why pay a premium price for protection you don't need?
Okay, so it won't pay off to put encapsulated motors in the generator room. But I didn't bring up the idea, you did. And anyway, that isn't one of the applications I had in mind.
Where would you put encapsulated motors then, Eddie?
Oh, a rock crushing plant is one place, and... Now, don't try to tell me I don't need protection for motors in there. Have you seen the rock dust in that building? Well, the guys have to wear masks sometimes.
Sure, you need protection, but the right kind. What have you got in the rock crushing area now? Totally enclosed motors?
That's right, but they're ready for replacement in the next couple of years.
But why replace a totally enclosed motor with an encapsulated motor?
Why? Because we can save about 25% on the cost of a new motor, that's why.
But just a minute ago, you were talking about needing protection. An encapsulated motor can't possibly give you the kind of protection that you get from a totally enclosed motor.
Why not?
Well, look here. Now, this is the inside of a standard motor. You can encapsulate the windings, but what about the bearings? If this abrasive dust gets into the bearings here, you're in for trouble. Or worse yet, if the dust really gets thick, it could clog up the air gap between the rotor and the stator and cause a freeze-up. Don't forget, this clearance is less than a 1/16 of an inch in most motors.
Joe, look, if this encapsulation is as bad as all that, how come your competition is selling so many encapsulated motors?
I didn't say encapsulation is bad. We sell encapsulated motors, too. And in the right application, they really pay their way. An encapsulated motor is a stepping stone between a standard drip-proof motor and a totally enclosed motor, where the drip-proof wouldn't give the protection needed against flooding or heavy spraying. An encapsulated motor will do the job. But where you also need extra protection against dust or dirt or magnetic chips or anything like that, only a totally enclosed motor will do.
Are you saying, then, that you wouldn't put any encapsulated motors in around here?
Well, Eddie, the number of applications that really call for encapsulated motors is surprisingly small. Offhand, I can think of only one place in your plant where you might get your money's worth by installing encapsulated motors.
Where's that?
Well, you know the shed where you wash down your gravel?
Yeah.
There isn't much dust there, but there is plenty of moisture. If you've had trouble with wet windings in your motors, encapsulation might be a good idea there.
Yeah, they get wet all right.
Well, Joe Martin seems to have this matter well in hand, so I'll interrupt to make one observation. Within this overall question, to encapsulate or not to encapsulate, is a subsidiary question. Which encapsulating material to use, when, and why? Now, you've probably heard about epoxy, encapsulator, hard epoxy, soft epoxy, polyseal, and probably others. Perhaps this matter came up in your discussion a few minutes ago. In any event, let's hear a summing up on the subject from Joe Martin.
It's strictly a matter of economics and heat transfer. Heat dissipation becomes more difficult as you go up in horsepower. So General Electric uses the more economical epoxy system in motors up to 7.5 horsepower, where satisfactory cooling can be achieved. In motors above 7.5 horsepower, GE has the polyseal insulation system, which uses a silicone compound. This material holds up over the entire operating range, and it goes on in a tough, thin coating which gives better heat transfer than you can get with the thicker, solid encapsulating materials.
I have to hand it to you, Joe. You have an answer for everything. It may be a line of baloney, but you sure make it sound good.
It's the facts, Eddie. You can check on anything I've said.
Joe Martin has the facts. And with the facts, he has made a dent in some misconceptions held by his customer. With encapsulation placed in the proper perspective, the way is now clear to discuss other considerations which are equally as important, in fact, more important to most customers in the selection of motors. Well, there you are. 4 problems, 4 solutions. Let me re-emphasize, the solutions we have suggested are not the only ones. If your discussions have turned up some that are more satisfactory for your purposes, so much the better. Whatever the source of the solutions, the important thing is that you use them when you run into obstacles similar to those you have seen today. For every sales obstacle, there is a selling solution. And it's the mark of a real salesman that he's ready for these problems and applies the solutions aggressively.